Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Johnny. So as you heard, I work at Comaba and do research there and teach there. And what I'm going to talk to you about today, I have basically two goals for my presentation. The main part of my presentation is going to be telling you the other side of what you just heard earlier. So I recently went through the process of publishing an article and writing a research news article and so forth. So I'm going to tell you about how that process goes, how you do it, and what impact it had for me. If there's any time left at the end, I'm very interested generally in outreach to the public, and since I moved to Japan I've not had much opportunity to do it, so I'm going to spend a few minutes enthusing about outreach activities and offer some suggestions or possibilities to make you think about things to do in the future. So that's what I'm going to do for the next few minutes. Just before I start, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself because it's quite relevant to everything that I've got to say. I'm from the United Kingdom, and I grew up near in the north of England, quite near to Manchester, out in the countryside, and then I studied down in Oxford and got my undergraduate and my PhD degrees down there. And after that, I left the UK and came to Japan, and I worked at Riken for 2 years as a postdoctoral researcher. I then returned to the UK and moved to the University of Leicester, where I ran a research group and was a senior lecturer there. And then almost 8 years ago now, I guess, I left England and came back to Japan. I worked at Tokyo Institute of Technology for 3 years, and then I joined the University of Tokyo about 5 years ago. And so I work on the PEAK and GPES programs, which are undergraduate and graduate international degree programs at the university at Comaba. And I run a research group that is doing spin and photochemistry. And we develop instruments and apply them to solve particular scientific problems. So that's a little bit about me. And so the question is, why did I get involved with using uTokyo Research, the repository, and so forth? Well, I have a lot of personal reasons. Firstly, when I was in the UK, I published some fairly high-profile papers, but I never actually did any other promotion of my work. And I always thought this was a bit of a missed opportunity. So when the opportunity came to do it here, I thought it was something I should look into. Secondly, since I was a researcher in the UK, things have changed. You know, the internet's changed, social media has become a big thing. Promotion of research outside of just academic journals is now a really important thing to do. Okay, that's where most people find interesting things to read about, is through this kind of ubiquitous internet connectivity we have. And I thought, well, I need to try and engage with that more. Thirdly, because of my moving around, I'd actually been out of my own research field for a long time. And so while I once had quite a big international reputation, it had dropped and everyone had forgotten who I was. So having got some really new big results that I wanted to promote them as much as possible to get, put myself back on the map if I could. So I needed to re-establish my own reputation. And in my lab, we'd got some exciting new results, so I was very enthusiastic about trying to share those results as widely as possible. And also, I think I very much believe in the idea that as scientists and researchers in general, we have a great responsibility to educate the public. I think everything we've said this morning is about doing things from our perspective, and in the second part of my talk, I'm going to think more about the public's perspective. Okay, but I think it's important, and it's useful in doing things like reporting to funding bodies and saying, look, this is the thing that I'm doing. Okay, so you've heard about the process. Let's just talk you through it briefly again from my perspective. I had sent off my paper to the journal and it was accepted. So as soon as it was accepted, I immediately got in touch with the uTokyo research staff. Now, as you've heard, the correct channel is to go through your press officer. I didn't know anything about that, so I just spoke to them and they taught me about the process and talked me through it and helped me out a great deal. And as you heard, the form that you fill in, you do need to complete in English and Japanese. So from my perspective, that was a problem, so I had to go beg one of the very erudite professors that I know to try and translate my article for me, which he very kindly did. But as I said, one of the great things was then that, as I'll mention in a moment, the team are great at helping with that. And then these are sort of the four things, and what perhaps didn't come across earlier, but if you do this, it's all kind of done together. It was a very seamless process for me. So during my communication with the people in the press office, it led to the Utokyo Research News article, the Japanese press release, I'll talk about that, but international press release and Utokyo repository was all handled with the same forms and the same procedure. So actually listening to the talks this morning, I was a bit daunted by some of the things you got to do. It was much less daunting in reality for me. Everyone was very helpful and they guided me through it. Okay, that's what my next slide is really all about, to thank the staff, because they were extremely helpful, knowledgeable and friendly. So they made this, what ostensibly is a very complicated process, very, very easy. They guided me through it. Whenever I had any questions, I emailed them. They always got back to me incredibly quickly. They were kind enough in some cases to send Japanese emails to other people like the press officer on my behalf. Okay, so if you've got any concerns, if you've watched this and you think, oh, it sounds a bit complicated, maybe I won't do it, don't do that. Talk to them. They were extremely, extremely helpful. And really they gave, I have to say, excellent advice on the editing. Particularly from the English version. I've done a lot of outreach. I think I'm quite good at communicating with the general public, but they pointed out lots of things in my article that really needed improving, and they really helped me reduce the jargon and make it very, very applicable. So it was very helpful. And they really do have expertise in that, and you can really rely on them to make sure that what comes out of the final news article is going to be, accessible. So after it all happened, you've seen that, most of you, I assume, have seen the pages, but the Utokyo Research webpage is a really nice design. It's very clean, it's very easy to find things on. I think it's very impressive. Here's a picture of my article as it appeared. I can't say enough how useful it is to have these permanent web pages with short summaries, nicely written summaries in English and Japanese. Having the Japanese page has been so useful for me, because when I interact with Japanese researchers and they want to know what I'm doing, I can just send them the link to the Japanese page and they can read a short article and get a good flavour of what kind of research I do in my group. So I have to confirm this, but at the moment I believe these links stay. Once your article's on Utokyo Research, it's not disappearing, so you can permanently link it on your own website, use it in social media and so forth. They do the Facebook posts and the Twitter feed, as you said. It was great fun watching the article. My students posted it and it appeared in the official site. You can watch the likes and things clock up, and it's nice to see comments and realize that people are reading your article. As you know, this is distributed in an email newsletter as well. And what's really good is, how many chances are you going to get on the front of the University of Tokyo website? You're automatically on the front of the English website when your news article comes on, and maybe one click away on the Japanese website. So it really does get your research front and center. So that's the process. Okay, what about the impacts? Okay, well, the first impacts, before I said that, I should tell you about the press release. So at the same time, the team will help you negotiate with the press officer, etc., about doing your press release. For me, I decided not to go with a Japanese press release. And the reason for that was simply because if the Japanese press agencies and reporters would have been contacting me directly asking for interviews in Japanese, and I at the time didn't feel confident enough to do that. Probably next time I do one, I'll take a chance on it. But you don't have to do a Japanese press release if you don't want. Okay, obviously there are benefits to doing so. So I just went with the international press release through Eureka Alert, as you saw here. Here's actually my article as it appeared on Eureka Alert. And so that went out, and very quickly we started to see things happening after that had come out. So my immediate consequences was the fact that, first of all, we got this new exciting paper. My students were keen to tell people about it. If they publish a link to the article, no one can access it. No one's got any interest. So instead, you can publish a link to your Utokyo news article. Everyone could read about it. the general public could read about it. It was really, really great to post on Facebook and things like ResearchGate. And our article was rapidly picked up by lots of other news sites and actually blogs. It appeared in other languages. I think it may have appeared in Spanish, actually, on one Spanish blog. But we had plenty of different hits: Phys.org, Nanowork, Science News Online, various things. I don't think my article was particularly high enough profile to appear on any major newspapers, but it got picked up quite a lot and appeared in online discussions. It was on Pinterest and all sorts of different sites as well. So one of the questions was about impact. My paper was published on this high-profile chemistry journal called Angewandte Chemie, which is one of the top chemistry journals. And if you go on the site, they do tracking of how much impact your article has had through the internet. And so I could find out that actually my article is now in the top 1.6% of all articles from this journal in terms of the internet impact that it's had. And that is almost completely down to these activities. And in the top 5% of all outputs tracked by this online tracking service. So I have absolutely no doubt that the readership impact of my paper was substantially higher than it had we not done the press release. There's definite immediate impact and immediate readability. And I noticed this as well, because compared with any of the high-profile papers I published when I was in the UK, I got far more requests for preprints, far more people sending me messages on ResearchGate about the article. So I think I can't say enough how useful it is, and it doesn't cost you anything, just some time and a bit of effort, but the impacts are definitely worth it. So my article was published about 6 months ago, I guess, a little over. What's happened since then? Well, a number of things. Shortly afterwards, was invited, based on all our articles, all the publicity, to submit a related article to a video journal called Jove, which is a journal of visualized experiments. Actually, I decided not to do this because our technique's kind of proprietary and not really ready for the mainstream yet, but it was nice to be asked. I got invited to submit an article about the article to Atlas of Science, which we did, and you can see, again, the Atlas of Science article here. So this is a different article that I wrote, but again, it all comes through the publicity. One of the best results for me, and just to let you know this, is Todai is a big place. Perhaps you don't know what other people are doing, where there are things. So I was discovered by another Todai professor, a physics professor in Hongo in the Department of Engineering, who read my Utokyo research news thing, thought it was fascinating, asked me to come and speak at a conference there, give an invited talk, and then I've now joined a kind of joint research program with them. So none of that would ever have happened without having done this Utokyo News article. I was also invited to write an article for the Japanese Society of Applied Physics monthly magazine, which is called Oyobutsuri, which I'm going to submit after this afternoon, so that's ready to go. And I've just been invited about last week for our article to be featured as a key scientific article in Advances in Engineering, which is a Canadian-based engineering website. Okay, so for me, none of these kind of things happened until I did this. So I can't say for certain this is all exactly what caused all these, but the combined effect of press release, the Utokyo News website, and the publicity has meant that there's been far more impact of my research than had I not done it. Okay, how am I doing? Halfway through. Okay, so I thought I should mention Utokyo repository as well, because actually this seems like a very complicated process, but in my case it was very, very simple. Again, thanks to the expertise of the team. When you fill in all the forms for doing your Utokyo News research article, the article in question, you can automatically sign the release form and check the details for Utokyo repository. So when I did all this stuff, this was all taken care of. And they also helped me check that about the embargo dates on my particular journal and the copyright release stuff. So it was very straightforward. I filled it all in, signed it, completely forgot about it. And then maybe last week, I think, 6 months afterwards, I got an email from the Utokyo repository saying my article is now stored in there, and it's the post-print, i.e. the final version As you heard, it's the final version after your article's been accepted, before they do the typesetting and everything. So you can put that in. Why is this good? Well, my article, these kind of journals, as you know, is paid access, firewall, paywall, very, very difficult to access. If you use things like ResearchGate or any of the other social networking, it's frustrating. You can't share your article with people unless you kind of break the law, and you really don't want to do that. So, but with this way, I can now have my full article hosted on ResearchGate, which is great. And that's one of the reasons I had the question before, is I'm now thinking, can I go back through my entire back history of papers and put them all into the repository so that I can make my entire publications available online for free download to everybody, which is a very nice situation to be in. So instantly, without me doing anything, the Utopia research web pages were updated with the new links to the article. So anyone who now goes to the Utopia page can download the article instantly for free. And you get this lovely, short, convenient link that you can use, and as long as you use the DOI and everything, you can put this on your website, you can put it on your social networking pages, etc. Okay, so for me it was one email that started it all. I contacted Utopia Research, said I'd like to write a news article. At the end of that, I ended up with an article, a press release, a repository, and a very pleasant experience out of it. So all I can do is say, if you're interested at all, just go for it. So, in summary then, it was a really smooth and very useful process. It gave me various convenient resources. All the news sites that picked up my article I could post links to. The Utopia Research website I could post links to. I got far more exposure and readership than I would have done normally. As you've seen, I got many, many contacts and many follow-on opportunities to keep promoting my research and raise the profile, and I now have a non-paywalled link to my original article, thanks to the repository. Okay, so that was my experience of using these services, so I can't recommend it enough. What I'd like to do for the last 10 minutes is tell you a little bit. I'm going to go back in time a little, because when I worked in the UK, public outreach was actually one of my main areas, and I spent huge amounts of time working on this, which means I've got quite a lot of experience and ideas. So if any of you are thinking about getting involved and you're working in the sciences, for example, and you want to talk about it or run ideas or share ideas, I'm happy to talk to anyone and offer any help that I can in that. So I worked really for many years extensively in public outreach of science in the UK. I actually organised and ran lots and lots of outreach events, and I would typically run 20 to 30 events a year. So I spent really quite a considerable amount of time doing this. And I did it in a variety of different contexts. I worked with the general public, I worked with school teachers, I worked with children, young children as young as 10, and school children right the way through school up to age of 18, pre-university. And one of the big things that I did was develop a nationwide program in the UK that was called, after the Star Trek name, Chemistry, the Next Generation. And we spent a lot of time coordinating outreach activities across the whole country. So I thought I'd just give you a taste of some of the things we'd like to do. I'd quite like to be involved in more, and I'll talk about some ideas in a minute. This is a list of some of the kind of activities that I developed and ran when I was in the UK. So we worked with primary school children. Sorry, so I went even younger. We did this magical chemical energy talk, which I'll show you in a moment. We used to do experiments where we got children to make ice cream with liquid nitrogen and all kinds of activities like that. And then we had ranges of different activities for all sorts of different groups. The thing that really underpinned all of these was that these activities were hands-on. All right, so one of the things I'd like to stress most is how good it is when you're doing outreach, particularly with young people, is to getting them involved, getting them actually to do things themselves rather than just talking to them. I mean, I would make that point generally in education, but it's particularly important when you're trying to enthuse young people. Let me just give you some examples. It's a few years old now, so we don't have, this was pre-smartphone. But one of the big events we did that was run in the middle part of the UK and involved 4 different universities was an event called Chemistry Hands-Free and Hands-On. And what we did was we centered an entire day's activities based on the science, and particularly the chemistry of the mobile phone. So my university, we developed a hands-on activity where you basically made your own electroactive polymers like you would use in the displays. The other universities did, like, for example, solar cells for energy. Green technology on biodegradable polymers was done by AstraZeneca, a company who worked with us. We did display technology. Some of the worked with light-emitting chemicals, and we did photolithography, where we did our own burning of circuit boards using light with the University of Nottingham. So together, we put all this together along with talks, quizzes, all sorts of activities, and we do this big event. So there's a little interview here that you can see from that. So
what we're trying to do.
Okay, so that was an event that's really aimed at 17 and 18-year-olds before they go to university, and it's really trying to get them excited about chemical science in this case. Just another sort of example to give you a flavour. My alter ego at this point was Harry Potter. So every summer I used to run a series of lectures for an entire week. We would run the lecture twice a day. Each time we'd have 300 10-year-olds who would come, and it was kind of like almost like a show. We'd have music, and then there was a big display, and we taught them all about energy. So this is our Harry Potter lecture. This is just a short report on this from the news that was on, so I'll just show you. Okay, so the reason for telling you this is really one of the things you heard right at the start was, why would you want to do outreach? I think all of us who work in our own respective fields are extremely passionate about what we do. And I think there's an enormous amount of benefit and joy in sharing that with people and then encouraging the next generation of young people to think about the kind of problems that we think about. And so I had nothing but great experiences in all the outreach work that I did, and it was incredibly educational, incredibly satisfying. So I just really want to encourage you to do it. So some thoughts, think about your research. What fascinates you the most? What's really exciting? Why do you do it? And can you think about a way of sharing that joy and passion and interest with others? And if you want to do it, you can do it. There's always an opportunity. Don't do it the other way around. Don't wait until someone says to you, oh, we're running this event, would you like to be involved and help out? If you want to do it, do it. There are always ways. There are always people who will help you. Okay, so if you've got an idea, find someone to talk to and think about how you can do it. And I'm pretty certain that you can always find the money or the help you need to achieve that. What I'd like to think about particularly from an international perspective as well, is doing outreach that involves both, subject-based material, whether it be in the humanities, social sciences, the sciences, but also English language. It's a big thing now, As a parent myself, I know how much parents are interested in their children learning English if they can, and learning English in context is always a good way. So if anyone's interested in thinking about running events that involve, for example, science events that involve English and Japanese, then I think there are lots of opportunities for that. There are lots of students both now in Todai now, both as undergraduates in our peak program at Komaba, and I can connect people with them if they're interested. We have our many graduates here, some of yourself, who are working in various different fields. I think it'd be nice to think of ways to connect us all and get Japanese and international researchers together to develop outreach activities that we can do. So this is a call to action, as it were, for that. And again, I would encourage you, where possible. I think it's great. You can also, you'll hear in the next talk more about using the internet as well to be able to do things. I think the opportunities now are fantastic because you've got this internet and widespread distribution, and also the local hands-on. So I think you can think across those two different regimes. And if there's anything I can do to help, if I can support or ideas, or if you just want to bounce ideas off, then I'm happy to talk to anyone anytime. You can just contact me. So with that, I'm going to draw to a close. I've also noticed my email address is on the sheet, but it's here. If anyone has got any ideas or wants to be put in contact with international students at Kumaba to think about doing outreach activities, please get in touch with me. And thank you very much for your attention.